Wild Tales is sponsored by Cotswold Outdoor. When we're out in the elements, we're in our element. And outside retail expert Cotswold Outdoor is helping more of us to get out with the right kit. Thanks also to their support, the National Trust is helping walking communities to access the UK's outside spaces. And we're working to fix 15,000 kilometres of paths and trails by 2030 for everyone to enjoy. Find your element with Cotswold Outdoor.
It became very popular to buy these animals. They would go to the pet store, they would buy one of these very small hatchling turtles, and somewhat easy to keep as far as people thought.
Next time you're passing a lake, river or canal, keep your eye on the water and you may just glimpse a mysterious shelled animal that looks out of place. Invasive terrapins are now part of freshwater systems in the UK, continental Europe and beyond. And these animals have a fascinating origin story. We're going back to the 80s and 90s to discover how a popular cartoon triggered a big abandoned animal problem. I'm Ranger Rosie Holdsworth. Welcome to Wild Tales, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles pet craze. A comic convention in New Hampshire, US, 1984. Two young, struggling comic book artists, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, are hoping to get some attention with their new creation. They've scrambled funds to self-print their comic book. The concept is a bit out there. The main characters are four half-man, half-turtle fighters. And they're named after Renaissance artists. There's Donatello, Leonardo, Raphael, and party dude Michelangelo. In fact, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles becomes so phenomenally popular, it's a touchpoint of 80s and 90s pop culture. And 40 years later, the franchise is still going. Back in the 80s, kids are seeing the first toys, costumes, and of course, the cartoon series. No one could have predicted the stratospheric global success of the Turtles. And it seems no one predicted something else. How a cartoon would spark a pet craze and a conservation cautionary tale.
I have the song playing in my head now.
This is Suzie Simpson, leader of citizen science project Turtle Tally UK, recalling the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon's particular appeal.
These turtles, they were kind of human-like turtles that were ninjas. This was because some radioactive goo had been poured on them and they happened to be in the sewers in New York and got rescued by a rat, and the rat became their parent and taught them ninja skills, and they basically went out into the streets and became these kind of vigilante heroes.
Kids' fascination with street fighting turtles translates into a spike in demand for the animals as pets.
The 80s and 90s, there were millions of baby hatchlings that were being imported. And so, yes, it seems to be linked in with that kind of popularity or that craze around that time.
Wild Tales producer Michelle and her sister were among the many kids who hit the pet shop.
We were walking around the tanks and we saw this tank full of these really cute, tiny turtles or terrapins. The size of them was so small they could fit in the palm of your hand, and the one that we had our eye on was called a red-eared terrapin. And these really pretty red markings on the sides of their heads. And I think my parents thought it would be a bit like getting a fish. This was pre-Google. Maybe we should have asked the shopkeeper a few more questions, but we collected this terrapin, we called her Elliot, and we took her home and put her in a tank in our bedroom. Elliot always looked very pretty, but she was quite a grumpy kind of terrapin. It was quite hard to stroke her, but we still loved Elliot. She was very cool and a big feature in our bedroom growing up in the 90s for sure.
Terrapins, red-eared sliders and yellow-bellied sliders are especially popular pets because of their colourful markings. The term terrapin is what we in the UK use to mean freshwater turtle species. Suzie takes us for a moment and went to the wetlands and swamps of the US to meet these terrapins in their natural habitat.
These animals' native range is in the States, so sort of southeasterly, the eastern parts of the States. The natural behaviours, they will normally come out in the morning and they will bask when it gets nice and warm. They rely on the external environment to heat up. They're not like us. And that will occur mainly from spring through to autumn time. And then when it gets to winter time, they all tend to go down and brumate, which means that they just slow down their body. They just stay under the water and kind of wait out the colder period until they come back out in spring again. And they're beautiful. Their carapace, their shell, their protective shell and what they can do and how they go under, during brumation, during winter, and they're able to breathe underwater like that. They're just incredible creatures.
Back in UK homes, pet owners are having problems. Terrapins grow from 50p piece sized to dinner plate sized, and they can live for over 40 years, meaning lots of pet owners are well out of their depth.
Then how do you keep an animal that size? They need big space, a bout of space for swimming, so large area with a pool to be able to swim. They need to be able to come out and bask on a platform under UV bulbs and basking lights. So the complexity comes in later when they get a lot bigger, and that's when people realise that that wasn't a good idea maybe.
So Elliot got so big that my dad ended up converting her into a bigger tank and made this terrain for her where she could crawl out and bask in the sun. My sister and I shared a room so the terrapin could have a room to itself. She even jumped out of the tank a couple of times and ended up in the washing pile because she was just getting far too big for her terrain.
People start to look for ways to relieve themselves of their large, long-lived pets. Some people give their pets to rescue sanctuaries, while some illegally release terrapins into lakes, canals and rivers.
We've had people report that they've seen people literally walk down to the lake, open up a carrier and just pour the turtle into the water. And they're in canals and lakes and rivers and all sorts. If anybody releases a pet into the wild, you risk passing on diseases, and that animal itself could die or become injured. So actually there's a lot of issues with that.
These terrapins are classed as invasive species, meaning animals that have been introduced by people into an ecosystem and could be having a negative impact, like spreading disease and outcompeting native species. Suzie Simpson's work at Turtle Tally UK is a citizen science project asking people to send in their sightings to help build a better understanding of these non-native species in our waterways.
It's a survey that we run online for the public to submit sightings of released pet freshwater turtles. There are a few things that we just confirmed. The red-eared sliders and the yellow-bellied sliders, we find there are lots of these animals out there. London's our biggest hotspot for finding these turtles. So it's highly urbanised, lots of buildings, lots of people living there. So the chances are we've got a lot more pet owners. At the moment, we don't believe that they're breeding either, because our weather, our conditions here in the UK just are not appropriate for them to hatch out young. It's not hot enough for long enough. So I don't think we have thriving populations here. I think what is happening is these animals are being released into the waterways. And as a result, each year, if they survive another year, then they survive another year. But if they don't, then we've actually got a naturally dying off population. We're more concerned about soft shells and common snapping turtles, and these animals are a lot bigger than the red-eared sliders, but we don't get a lot of reports of those.
So Suzie's work suggests in the UK, invasive terrapins' impact is limited because they're unlikely to breed in our cooler weather. But in continental Europe, invasive terrapins are much more of a problem.
They can outcompete native species. For example, in Europe, we actually have the European pond turtle, and this animal's at risk and is threatened. And so actually these introduced pets outcompete the native pond turtles, and it causes them to not use the basking spots, so they lose body condition. There are lots of aspects that actually affect the native species. And then obviously if they breed, if the climate is right, so in Europe and further afield, if it's warm enough for the eggs to hatch out and they're able to have a thriving population, then they'll be eating more different species, plants, animals.
Through the 90s, it's recognised that the international trade in terrapins is causing a widespread invasive species problem. In 1997, the UK and other European countries banned the import of red-eared sliders as pets. Since these are the most in-demand species, the ban helps to bring an end to the turtlemania pet craze. What can we learn from the tale of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pet invasion?
I would definitely say turtles are not an appropriate pet for a lot of people. Please don't put animals out into the wild. If they're not supposed to be there, then they shouldn't be released out into the wild. Find rehoming services, sanctuaries. They will be able to help you and provide guidance. I think there's something with a responsibility to some of these production crews and TV and films. Kids sort of see these animals and they get really excited about them. There's something there in being responsible about that. We work with pet shop owners, so they're also trying their best to educate people when they come in. Some of them won't sell them at all, and some will only sell them at certain times of the year, won't sell them around when the film or TV releases are. We're on a good trajectory for getting that awareness out there.
My parents ended up taking her to a terrapin sanctuary. And a lot of pet owners like us just hadn't realised quite how much it would be to take this turtle on. So I do feel bad about that. But I like to think that Elliot's still out there with all her little terrapin friends swimming around in their sanctuary.
As for turtles and terrapins, these beautiful animals with their patterned shells and slow, smooth movements capture our imaginations, even when they're depicted wearing ninja masks and eating pizza. But we need to remind ourselves to put the animal first. You might even say, turtle power! Thanks for listening to this episode of Wild Tales. Look out for terrapins in waterways. In my patch in Yorkshire, us rangers have been enjoying spotting our long-time resident Terry the Terrapin this spring. And if you do spot your own terrapin, head to the Turtle Tally UK Citizen Science Project and let Suzie know all about it. For more Wild Tales action, head to @WildTalesNT on Instagram and share your own stories with us with #WildTalesWednesday. See you next time. Wild Tales is sponsored by Cotswold Outdoor, your outside retailer and epic guides to adventure. Quick breathers, calming walks, or heart-pounding hikes, we feel better when we get out more. Find quality kit and 50 years of outdoor wisdom. Plus, National Trust supporters get 15% off walking kit in-store and online. Feel in your element, in the elements at Cotswold Outdoor.